Hello there, everyone. Today we'll be proving how God exists or a God exists. Now, there are terrible arguments and misconceptions for how people think God exists. So today I will clear that up. Plus, I will give my top arguments to how I think God exists. Now, I will also rank them. So, thank you everyone for watching. Now, to start off, we have a common argument or a common bad argument that people use, which is faith. God is real because I believe him. Then this is a terrible argument because it has many logical fallacies, and something isn't real just because you believe in it. I can believe that I'm smart, but just because I believe I'm smart doesn't mean I'm smart. Now, keep going with me. Now, for what I rate faith is, I would say, terrible argument because it's logical fallacies, it doesn't prove anything, and it honestly makes you look stupider when you use this argument. Now, another argument that's commonly used, or another bad argument, is because he talked to me / experience. He appeared to me in a dream, and that's why I believe. Now, this is a bad argument because there's no way to prove what you saw or what happened or what God supposedly did. Now, this is a good argument to get into Christianity. Like, if something supernatural happened to you that you can't explain, that's, personal experience for you, then of course it would be a great argument for you to come into Christianity. Now, for anyone else, they can just say you're schizophrenic, you were dreaming, you saw something terrible, or you were just insane at that time. So it's a bad argument to prove to others why God is real, but it's a good argument, or it's a good thing for others to come to God. This is a big reason why people come to God, is because they had experience. So it's a bad argument to prove, but it's a good argument to get people to come into, or to have people get into religion and stuff like that. Where would I rank this argument? Probably D tier, because it's a terrible argument. There's no way to prove that it actually happened, but it's still a good way for someone that this happened to get into Christianity, so, or any religion, in fact. So I'm gonna put it D tier. Now, evidence, or the evidential argument, is a pretty good one. So it's basically paranormal things such as demon possessions, visions that come true, near-death experiences, and other unexplainable things. And there's also artifacts that support religious narratives, like Jesus' tomb being empty, the Shroud of Turin, and carriages at the bottom of the Red Sea, Egypt. So this is a good argument because it gives evidence to people who don't believe. It gives evidence to the people who are asking for evidence. So we can see two examples. Clara Germania Klee. Now, Clara Germania Klee was a South African girl, which, supposedly made a pact with Satan when she was 16. With this, she could speak and understand all languages and would hate being near holy things. Now, of course, this was according to nuns. After this, she went haywire and screamed supposedly louder than an East African lion. She got exorcised by a Catholic priest and supposedly by eyewitnesses there, flew 5 feet into the air. She was healed and apologized for what she did. I'll link the source I got this from, which is Wikipedia. Anyway, so this is cool because it's eyewitnesses. It's happened, during our time. It was documented, photographed, that stuff. So this can be very, appealing. It can be convincing to people. Next is a very good argument I like. It's the Shroud of Turin. This blanket could not only prove Jesus' existence, but it could also prove in his resurrection. This is because the pattern is most likely caused by a fast burst of radiation that can make an image like this without damaging the cloth. Okay, so basically, this is meaning that this cloth was made with extra power, because supposedly there's two arguments: is that it was created by radiation, and that either a fast burst or low-powered radiation. So what these people were arguing were that it was supposedly either the sun rays or radiation, or a fast burst of radiation. And they were saying that, supposedly the sun rays could, make an image on a cloth like this if you give it long enough. Now, they say that people made it happen, but this would be very hard to do. Another thing is it's an oil painting, but that's also most likely not what happened because they really couldn't find any oil. The cloth is not that damaged, and according to carbon dating and radiation dating, it is from the time of Jesus in the 1st century. So this could prove the resurrection because Jesus was put in his tomb, a blanket was over him. So this could be that blanket. And yeah, it could prove that his existence and resurrection. So these are very good arguments, or very convincing things. So for the evidential argument, I would put it in decent argument. Now, why is it a decent argument? Because you could say, well, actually, the Shredder could have been sun, and it could have been made by some person because the sun causes radiation and stuff like that. And actually, the eyewitnesses never saw that, and they were just exaggerating what they saw to prove to people that God is real and stuff. So they can make that argument, and they can still deny this stuff. They can deny that Jesus' tomb was empty and just saying that they took his body out. They can deny the carriages and other stuff found in the Red Sea from old times. They can deny. So, and they can make up the reasons. So it's still a good argument. This gives some evidence, giving the atheists usually what they want. So it is a good argument, I would say, at least. Now, this is a funny argument. This is the why argument. So basically, keep asking for a question, such as how do humans exist, or where do morals come from, till they cannot answer with a logical response. Now, technically, this is a logical fallacy in itself, but also, it's not. But yeah, basically, it's dumb, but it does work, because you can only go back so far until you reach a dead end, or where scientists can reach a dead end and then they don't really know what happened, or they don't know really how all this came to be, like the question of how life actually came to exist and how first living things were formed. That's a very hard question to answer, because how do normal molecules and stuff just happen to have a chain reaction causing bacteria and animals and stuff like that? So it does kind of work, but it's also a very dumb question, since you could use it. You gotta put it in a smart way. You gotta start asking them why and question their belief. You can't just keep asking why, because this could be a childish argument. And then if they come back at you, I have a defense for this. So if they keep pressing you, or they use this on you, you can just say, because God created it like that. And if they keep pressing, then you can just say, God said so. And technically this is right, because whatever God said is right, because he is the most powerful, and he's most powerful because God said so. And then you could go back. So yeah, this argument does work, but it's also childish, and atheists will, or any other religion, or atheists or agnostics will, think that you're dumber, or that you're, playing a fool's game with them. Now, I would probably put this argument as a D-tier argument, bad argument, because really not going to prove to atheists that God's real, and it's actually probably going to make them mad. So it's a bad argument to use, and you probably shouldn't. Now, yes, you are correct, because there's no way you can win. You set up boundaries where they can't win, since you're just going to keep asking why, and they can't keep on giving you an answer. So yes, you will win the conversation, but will it prove to an atheist? No, and it'll probably anger them. Now, because the video is getting long and it's going to be a more complex argument, I will put Subway Surfers and Satisfying Sand videos on the side, so that you can, keep your attention span on my video. Anyway, So we have the next argument. The cosmological slash everything in our universe needs a creator. Now, this is basically like a chain reaction argument. This is saying that everything needs a reaction. Everything needs a reason why. Like, you're hungry, the reason why. You have metabolism, the reason why. And then the reason why, until you get to something created you or God created you. The first action or creator. Now, basically everything needs this because you can't go infinitely back. That's basically impossible, because then nothing created the world, meaning that the world shouldn't be created. So something has to create it. So there has to be a first action or a creator or first causer. Now, why would the first causer or first creator be a god or be as powerful as God? Well, number one, it has to be God, because it is the causer, which means it's internal, which means it always has to be there. Now, it's outside of realm of understanding because it's the first being, meaning, he's kind of all-powerful and stuff. And because he's the first causer, that means he can cause and change everything. But because he's the first causer, nothing can act upon him because he's the first. And also, if something could act upon him, then he would not be the first cause, since then the first cause could change, which means there needs something before that to change it. So he has to have infinite power. He has to be internal because he's out of a realm of understanding, and he has infinite power. He has to be all knowledgeable, basically being God. Okay, so basically to make this more understandable, everything is what it is and what it could be. We all are an act and a potency. So let's take for me, I am alive. This is what I am. Now, I could be smart, but to be smart, then I would need something to act upon me, like a book being read. But for the book to be read, something needs to act upon it to be read, because right now it's just placed somewhere. So everything is what it could be and what it is. Now, for something to change, suppose it needs to change, it has to be acted upon. Now, of course, because everything needs a cause, we have to go to the first cause. And because he can't be changed, right? Because if he can't be changed, because if he could be changed, then he wasn't the unactualized actualizer. He couldn't have acted upon everything else without already being everything it already could be. Because if it wasn't already everything it could be, then it could be acted upon, and it wouldn't be the first act, right? So it needs to be the unactualized actualizer. And because he's the unactualized actualizer, he must be all internal and all powerful. Because he's all powerful, he must be all knowledgeable. Meaning the first actor, the first thing must be God or a godlike entity. Now, I'd say this is a pretty good argument. Of course, it won't convince everyone, and it is a little bit complex to understand, but still a good argument, and it's a logical argument, so it can't, fall into a logical fallacy. So not only is it a good argument, it's logical, and it can convince people if you're able to communicate it properly. Like, I will post a video to one of my favorite YouTubers, one of my favorite YouTubers, and he explains it much better than I do. Now, if I explained it properly, then, that's pretty good. But he'll explain it better. But still, I think this is a good argument, and I put it in A tier. Good argument. So, next we have Pascal wager. Now, this is obviously a terrible argument to anyone who has already heard of it. So, it's not necessarily an argument for the existence of God. It's an argument to why, if God does exist and we have evidence to prove that God exists, why should we believe in it? Now, the reason why people think that this is an argument for God's existence is because people, or Christians at least, use it in this way. Of course, it's not supposed to be used in this way. It's just supposed to be used as, if we can prove that the Christian God exists, this is why you should believe in him or follow him. So basically, no belief and God exists, infinite punishment. If no belief and no God exists, finite gain. If you believe and God exists, infinite reward. If no God and you believe, finite loss. So basically, you only lose if you believe, and you don't lose anything if you do believe. Of course, this argument wouldn't work if you were talking about more than one God, like the Zoroastrian God, the Muslim or Islam, Judaism. But it's just supposed to be explained that if we do have evidence for Christianity, then this is a good argument for why you should believe Christianity, or you should follow in God's footsteps, because you will, get a reward from it. You will benefit. Now, I say Pascal wagers. Terrible arguments. It doesn't do anything to prove God. It's probably worse than the faith argument because it has no correlation to believing in God whatsoever, other than saying it's better to believe in God than to not believe in God. But it still doesn't believe in God necessarily, and then atheists will use the spaghetti monster thing, where it's basically saying, well, there's a spaghetti monster in space, and you can't see him, and just because you can't see him doesn't mean that he doesn't exist and stuff. So, bad argument, should never use it. So, the next argument is consciousness. So basically, one atom, one particle, or one quark does not make up conscious, right? Two atoms, two particles, or two quarks do not make up a conscious, or do not create conscious, right? So why does adding a ton more of these items that can't think up for themselves but only cause chemical reaction cause consciousness? And basically, consciousness is above our human understanding and scientific understanding. Thus, because it's out of our understanding, and anything that we can find on Earth, it must come from a higher source. You'll see this in another argument. Think about it. There's tons of things on Earth that can't make sense. Like consciousness is one of them, and because you really can't make sense of it, and nothing can make sense, it must come from something else that can make sense of it. Because it must come from a higher source, right? Another thing is you gotta presuppose stuff. We know that most people see colors and taste things, but how do we know that we see and taste things all the same? We don't. We presuppose that we see and taste things all the same. Like, basically, I could see purple as blue. I could see green as gold, right? And nobody would know. Well, people could know, but like if they all colors swap and it all seems normal to us, then nobody would know, right? I wouldn't even know myself. Same thing with taste. If sour tasted like more salty, but I still liked sour food like people like sour food, then nobody would know. So we had to presuppose that we all see and taste this, or most people, because remember there's people that are colorblind, but we know they're colorblind because they can't make out these sensitive colors, or people that really can't taste, we know that something's wrong with their taste buds. But the normal human being, we have to presuppose that everyone else can see the same colors and taste the same things, and because of that, we can think about it, and we can also presuppose other things like consciousness. Because it comes from a higher power, we cannot understand it ourselves, and we're guessing that some atoms and quarks, particles, all together, moving around, having a fun party, cause consciousness and higher understanding. So, to rank this argument, I would put in decent argument. It's okay, but I wouldn't use it normally in conversations, and I probably wouldn't even remember this argument. So, I'd say use it, but use it sparingly, because if you don't explain it, if I might have explained it wrong, then it doesn't make sense, and you can't use it at all, and you just look dumb trying to use it. Even though it is a good argument, you can look dumb, or you can mess it up. So I say only use it if you actually know what you're talking about. So our next argument is math. So basically, in math, there's a lot of things that we don't understand and that we can't really compute, right? I mean, we can compute it and we can solve it, and it does make sense. It can't go into equations. We can solve for it, but it just doesn't exist in our realm. Like imaginary numbers. Imaginary numbers exist mathematically and can be proven, but you cannot see them in the world. Thus, they have to be correlated to a higher dimension of thinking and understanding, right? Imaginary numbers are or have to be connected to something else, to some other understanding, to some other thing, because if they weren't, then you can there's no way you could be able to solve for them, and there's no way that they would show up in our world. And because they correlate with real numbers, or real numbers correlate with imaginary numbers, and imaginary numbers correlate with a world outside of our understanding, then, there kind of has to be a world outside of our understanding, because these imaginary numbers can't come from nowhere. They do make sense. They can be proven, but you still can't see them in this world. Now, another thing is infinity. Now, things have to have a start, but after that, they can go infinitely on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Like the Mandelbrot set, which goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and never ends. Because of this, there has to be something. We know that there's something internal. We know that there's something that's always been there. Then we can think that these things go on forever and ever and ever and ever. And we know that infinity exists because of these things. Another thing is that we can prove imaginary numbers do correlate with real numbers using Euler's identity, which is by imaginary number, I think that's exponent, plus 1 equals 0. So we know that imaginary numbers do correlate with real numbers because of this. Yeah. Now, I would put this argument in A tier. Now, I'd put an A tier, not S tier, because number one, you can still say that imaginary numbers actually don't make any sense and that we shouldn't use them at all, even though they can be proven with math and that we can see them in equations. But still, it's a really good argument because we can show that there is a realm of higher understanding even within math, because of these numbers don't correlate with the real world. We can't see them in the real world, but we know that they exist and they still can be proven for. Because of this, I will put an A tier. Good argument. Okay. Now, this argument is a good one, but also a bad one. Next, the ontological argument. So basically, it's God exists because of who he is. So basically, this argument is a good one because it kind of, explains God. So God is a being where nothing greater can exist. So all good is better than being flawed, existing is better than not existing, and all knowing is better than limited knowledge, and all powerful better than limited power. So basically, it's saying that God has to exist because not existing is greater or is less than existing. And because of this, he has to exist. This also counts out religions that believe in multiple gods, or that they have gods that can change their mind because they are or not all good, or it can be defeated because, number one, that means they're not all powerful, they're not all good, they're not all knowing. So yeah. Also, you may be saying, well, couldn't you put this with anything? Let's say you have a blanket that's all powerful, exists, all knowing, and is all good. Well, then you wouldn't have a blanket anymore. You would just have God. Now, you may say, well, this is a stupid argument because you're just thinking in your head. But still, with this thinking, existing is greater than not existing, which means he has to exist. Now, I would never use this argument because even though it's a good thought experiment, and it helps prove out other religions, this, won't prove an atheist at all, or prove an atheist that God exists. So again, this is an okay argument. This isn't going to convince any atheists, but it still is a good argument to, prove out or disprove other religions such as paganism and stuff like that. Now, it does make sense, but also doesn't make sense, and you won't be proving any atheists, even though, yeah, it's okay. So, next argument is morals. If there are a set principles that are good and another that are bad, then there is an order in our world, and not everything can be right. Thus, there has to be a creator that instituted these values. So, you get what I'm putting down. So, you got two ideas. I think murder is bad, and I think it's good. You obviously know that this one is the right one. Now, you may jokingly say, murder is good. Yeah, I think it's good. But if you were threatened with a knife, or even someone else with a knife, then you probably feel pretty bad, right? So, murder is bad, because we know that murder is bad. Then, or at least most of us know murder is bad, then there has to be an instituted values that were created, and because of that, there's an order to our world. Because there was an order to our world, then something must have designed that order. Because something must have designed that order, then there must be a creator. And that's basically the moral argument. Now, the moral argument is a good argument, but then they're just going to say, fight back against this and say, well, then why would God kill so many people in the Old Testament? Why would he have the flood? So, even though this is a good argument, it does prove that there is an order in the world, and, because something has to create that order, and because that order has to be created by something, there's a creator, atheists will still deny it, but it's still a good argument. For at least, I would say. Now, as I said, they're going to bring up the Noah's Ark or the flood, all the people that were killed, genocides, babies getting massacred and stuff like that in the Old Testament. So, use this argument if you know that they're not going to fight back. Because if they are going to fight back, then you must be educated on the Bible. So yeah, I'm going to put this argument in A tier. Good argument. So, next we have the transcendental argument. So basically, in our systems of understanding, we have worldviews such as logic, consistency, nature, and truth existing. With all this, there's no way to justify the views established, and need a basic framework of these terms to understand science and humans in our world. To conclude, God, or an infinitely powerful, knowledgeable higher being, is needed to make sense in our world. So, with all this, right, we have science. Science is laid on logic, human understanding, truth, and morals. And all that is then layered on God, or an infinitely powerful and knowledgeable higher being. So basically, you may say, well, why can't we prove any that this existed, or any of this existing? So, how would I, respond to that? Well, number one, how can you prove that truth exists in an atheistic system, right? If there is really no order to the world, and the universe was just an accident that happened, then really nothing, really matters, and that there's really no truth or order to our world, meaning, anything can be right. Because of that, there's no truth. One of the necessary things for science, because science is just proving the truth in our world, right? Another thing is morals. Morals really don't correlate to science, but again, it's just another thing that you need God for. Human understanding, well, that's a big thing, because science is supposed to help us understand humans. But, human understanding can't really be figured out by science and stuff, because there's the consciousness, and there's morals, which connect to human understanding, because, those are things that we don't really understand, and because those things need to come from an order, they have to come from God. And again, logic. How do you prove that logic? It actually exists, actually is meaningful, is worth anything at all. You can't prove that in an atheistic system where nothing matters. So you need God for that, because you need God for all of these basic things to understand science. You need, a higher power to prove that science is meaningful and that you can actually prove things with science. Now, this is a pretty good argument. Now, the reason that this is a pretty good argument is because, it's one of the things that atheists like to use or bring up.
I believe in science, so I can't believe in God.
One of the things that I've heard atheists say. And because of this, it's, very good for convincing. You're using science, one of their most beloved things, and evidence, well, like the evidential argument. With this logical argument, you're using two things that atheists really like and are asking you to, bring forward for them to believe. So, because of this, great argument. Now, again, like the math argument, like the cosmological argument, and like the conscious argument, you need to be able to explain this well, because if you're not able to explain this well, then people won't understand it, and then you're going to look dumber by yourself. Because you're not able to explain it well, then they're not going to get it, and they're not going to understand the argument correctly, so they're going to attack you because you're not able to explain it well, stuff like that. So with these arguments, you have to explain it well. You kind of have to memorize them just a little bit. But again, they're a good argument. This is a good argument. Actually, a great argument, I would say. And I put an S tier. Great argument. Now, our last argument is the teleological argument. So basically, things in our universe seem to have a purpose. We can see this in the fine-tuning of our universe, where if a gravitational pull was changed by a decimal, then the universe would either collapse in on itself or it never form anything. Because of all of this and all these circumstances, it is understandable to believe in a creator or God that designed the universe. So basically, think about this. Think of cookies. Someone had to bake these cookies for them to exist. They couldn't have just accidentally came to be in perfect circles with the right amount of sugar, with the right amount of butter, with the right amount of flour and cooking oil, and then all this tray, and they were accidentally put into an oven by some magical force and stuff like that. And the same thing with this machine. This machine was obviously designed for something, and obviously designed to create something, and it couldn't have just came by from natural forces. Like all the electronics just fell back, the wires were created and put in there, and then all these blocks were put together. It couldn't just accidentally happen. Something had to design both of these, and because of that, we could kind of see this in our world, like the gravitational pull thing. If conditions of our Earth were changed, or not of Earth, but of our universe were changed by decimals, then we couldn't have had a universe like this. We couldn't have had Earth, or we couldn't have sustained life and stuff like that. And because of that, we can kind of see that, the universe was created obviously for something, or we can see the universe was designed. So with all this, I would put the technological argument in A tier. It's okay, but again, atheists will deny, saying, well, the Big Bang happened and it was still all an accident, even with the low chances and probability. It's still an accident. So with all this, we have L tier. And I'd like to thank you for watching. I would really like to thank you for watching. So much. I want this YouTube channel to grow. I want to make some better videos and stuff. So again, thank you all for watching, and God bless you all.